I'm Rebecca from engVid. In the next few minutes, you will find out if you are giving your email address properly in English. Because in English, we have certain terminology that we use when we describe an email address. All right? So in this lesson, you'll find out if you're doing that properly. Now, unfortunately, lots and lots of people around the world are not doing this properly because they're following the conventions in their country, okay? And sometimes they're borrowing words from other languages and so on to give that. So after this lesson, you will know exactly how to give your email address, how to ask somebody for their email address, and also some of the terminology that we use when we're talking about email, all right? So let's get started. So first of all, this word email is a new word, right? So there's still a bit of disagreement around the world, even in the English-speaking world, about exactly how to use some of the detailed aspects of it. For example, do we write email just like that, email, or do we write e-mail? Okay, there are all kinds of little arguments about how to do that. But let me tell you in general, some of the things that most people are following, so you will always be correct. So first of all, the word email is used as a noun, a verb, and an adjective in English, generally speaking, okay? Maybe some companies have a different policy, but I'm going to tell you generally what most people are doing today and how it's being used. So for example, as a noun, we could say, I sent you an email, all right? That's a noun. Or as a verb, I'll email you. Now, some more formal companies frown upon that. They don't like using email as a verb, but again, most people, when they're just speaking, are using it that way. Next, as an adjective, he has 2 email addresses. All right? So here, email is being used as an adjective. So it can be used in all 3 ways. All right? Next, we can use another controversial subject. We can use email in a singular format or plural, all right? And there are a lot of arguments about how exactly we can do that. But again, I'm going to tell you what most people are doing today. This email is from Fred, okay? 1 email. Now, some people say that we shouldn't say that, and you should say, this email message is from Fred. So again, check if your company has any special rules regarding email communication and email terminology, okay? They might. And in that case, of course, follow that so that you keep your job, all right? But otherwise, in general, follow what I'm telling you and you will be fine. Next, plural. These emails just arrived, okay? So again, this idea of putting the S is also something that people are arguing about, but most of the time, people are saying emails when they're talking about more than 1 email message, okay? All right. Now, something else that you need to be able to do, excuse me 1 second, all right, is when you give your email address to someone, you need to be able to know how to spell your name and your email address, especially if you have an unusual name to someone who is a native English speaker, all right? So you have to be able to spell it in a very clear way. Let's suppose you're on a phone line and the phone line is really bad. People can't hear you very well. And even if they can hear you, they just don't recognize that name, okay? Or that word that you're saying. So you need to reference it in some way so that people don't make mistakes. Now, there is one way that you can use and you can learn if you wish. It's called the NATO Phonetic Alphabet, okay? That is a system that is in place. It's used all over the world by many organizations. And it's a system that gives a code, all right? So for example, A is alpha, B Bravo, C Charlie, D Delta, okay? So sometimes also airlines use this and so on. Armies use this. Aviation, in the aviation world, they use this system. So that way they have to be very precise, right? So they can be very sure that you're not just saying B, because maybe when you said B, I heard P. No, that can't happen if you're actually giving a word for each letter, right? And that's what the NATO Phonetic Alphabet does. It gives a word instead of the letter to explain it very clearly. So, for example, if I want to spell cab, using the NATO alphabet, I would say Charlie Alpha Bravo. Okay? Or you can say C for Charlie, A for Alpha, B for Bravo. Okay? Now, if you don't feel like learning that system, which you don't have to unless you have a certain kind of job or something like that, just come up with a simple system for your name of how to spell your name. You could just say to somebody, A for apple, B for boy, C for cat, D for dog, okay? You come up with your own system, but come up with a system to spell your name, all right? Okay, now, how do we ask people for their email? How do we give them our email? Usually it's pretty simple. If it's in a casual conversation, you could just say, what's your email address? Okay? Or what's your email? Sometimes they don't even say address. When we say email, they understand it means email address. Okay? Or more formally, could you please give me your email? Or could you please give me your email address? Okay? And the way you answer is what we're going to learn now, but you start that sentence by saying, my email is whatever you're going to tell them, or my email address is whatever I'm going to teach you next, which is so critical. Keep watching. All right, now let's learn how to say your email address in English, okay? Now, of course, when you're speaking your language, you're going to have your own vocabulary and terminology that is understood and used and accepted in your country or in your language. But when you're speaking English, we have certain terminology for the symbols that we use in an email address. So let's look at what they are. All right, so these are the most common symbols that you need to be able to say and learn in English. This symbol here, you should say at, just at, okay? So this symbol is at. Repeat it after me, at, like the word at. When you're saying it, open your mouth a little bit wide so it doesn't sound like it, but at. This is not called in English at the rate of. It's not called strudel. It's not called monkey's tail or anything else, which might be used in other countries, but is really not the proper convention or standard in English. All right? So when you see this, say at. When you see this, which is also part of an email address, in this case, we just say dot, okay? Normally, of course, in other situations, you could use the word period, you could use the word full stop, or you could say point when we're talking about numbers. But now we're talking about email addresses. So we're just going to say dot, all right? So first, let's just practice using these two symbols when we say an email address. So, John Doe at gmail.com. Say it after me. John Doe at gmail.com. Who's John Doe? Okay, John Doe is just a generic name that we give for any man, all right? And that's just used. It's used in hospitals, it's used by the police, or we're looking for a John Doe. We don't know who that person is. It's a generic name for a man. Similarly, a generic name for a woman is Jane Doe, all right? So let's now practice saying this email address. This would be jane.doe@yahoo.com. Again, jane.doe@yahoo.com. Good. Now, sometimes people put other symbols into their email address. If you've already done it, then let's learn how to say it. If you haven't done it, then try to avoid that because it just makes it a little bit more complicated. But if you have these symbols, this is what you need to say. Sometimes there is a line at the bottom, okay? And that is actually called something. It's called underscore, all right? Underscore. When people don't know what that line at the bottom is called, they say, that line at the bottom, okay? But that line at the bottom is called underscore. And sometimes they have a little hyphen. When they don't know what that's called, they say, that little dash in the middle, okay? So the proper word for that in English and in an email address is hyphen. Repeat it after me. Hyphen. This one, underscore. Good. This one, dot. This one, at. Good. Now let's practice saying some more email addresses, okay? John underscore Doe at hotmail.com. Good. Let's say this one. Jane hyphen Doe at gmail.com. Good. Now you're getting it. All right. Now sometimes instead of .com, you see other endings, okay? Other domain endings. For example, .net for network, .org for organization, .biz for business, and .edu for education. There are also many others, all right? So let's practice saying something like that. Courses at abcschool. What do you think it would be? Most likely for a school. It could be .com. It could also be what? Okay, it could be .edu. All right, very good. And here, Doug at fancy hotel. Again, could be .com or .biz. Okay? All right. Now, sometimes in addition, you see country endings. Okay? For example, .ca, .us. .ca is for Canada. .us is for the United States. .uk for United Kingdom. .br for Brazil, for example. .sa for Saudi Arabia. .ru for Russia. And each country has a country code similar to this, okay? And they're usually 2 letters. All right, so let's now practice everything we've learned by saying a few more email addresses, okay? Are you with me? Good. All right, here's this guy. He's really cool. His name is CoolJack at xyz.ca. Okay, remember? That's a country code, Canada. Here's another example. Info at nicerestaurant.com. Okay? Or contact at nonprofit.org. Or this is the way, okay, so now this part, this is how you should actually decide what your email address should be when you're going to use a personal email for professional purposes as well, okay? You don't want to really apply for a job with an email address that says CoolJack or Wonder Woman or something like that, okay? If you want to be silly, you can have a personal email address like that, that's fine. But normally, the standard format that's often used in companies and that's accepted and that looks professional is to write your first name and your last name, sometimes connected with a dot if necessary, okay? So first dot last at Gmail or whatever domain you have, .com, all right? So this has been a complete review of how you should say your email address in English so you can sound professional and also so that other English-speaking speakers can understand exactly what you're saying, whether you're telling a friend, a colleague, or a client. Okay? So thanks very much for watching. Please go to our website at www.engvid.com so you can do a quiz on this and really master it so you're very comfortable saying these things and making sure that you are correct when you communicate this information. Okay? And also, I'd be really happy if you subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out some of my other videos there. Bye for now. All the best with your English.